Welcome to this episode of the Metaphysical Manner podcast, courtesy of Violet Spring, author, holistic life coach, intuitive energy healer, Reiki master, numerologist, and tarot practitioner.
Okay, so you know how everyone's always talking about abundance and manifesting the life you want. Well, we're diving into a book that takes a really refreshing approach to this whole idea. It's called Abundance, The Whole Truth by Violet Spring.
Yeah, it's really interesting how she kind of flips the script on those typical think positive, win big messages.
Totally. It's those law of attraction messages we see everywhere can be kind of simplistic, like they're missing something.
Right. What Spring does is she challenges us to think about abundance as more than just acquiring stuff, more money, more things, more whatever.
It's not just about having it all. Right?
Exactly. She argues that it's just as much about letting go of what's not serving you, you know?
Well, I like that.
Yeah, it's like a cosmic decluttering in a way.
Ooh, I like that. It's like that feeling when you finally clean out a junk drawer.
Yeah, exactly.
And suddenly there's space for new energy to come in, new possibilities.
Exactly.
And you know what else? Spring really zeroes in on this idea that simply thinking positive thoughts might not be enough to manifest abundance.
Yeah, a lot of us have tried that, right?
Right. Have you ever, plastered on a happy face and hoped for the best?
Oh, totally.
Does it work?
Not always, But Spring digs deeper, you know? She introduces these 12 universal laws as the mechanics behind manifestation.
Oh, yeah, the 12 universal laws.
Now, you've probably heard of the law of attraction, right? But she argues it's only one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Okay, so it's like the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more going on beneath the surface.
Exactly.
So it's not enough to just focus on attracting what we want. We have to understand the bigger picture.
Right. And she doesn't just list these laws out like a grocery list either. Spring really emphasizes that we have to understand how these laws work together.
Okay, so they're all interconnected. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And they build upon each other in a specific order. She calls it the divine order of operation.
The divine order of operation. Okay. So it's there's a specific sequence we need to understand.
Exactly. And just like with any recipe, if you just throw all the ingredients in a bowl without following the steps.
Yeah, it's not going to turn out too well.
Right. You're not going to get the cake you were hoping for.
Or it might be a really weird looking cake.
Exactly. So Spring uses the law of vibration as an example.
Yeah.
A lot of people think it's just about slapping on a happy face when everything feels chaotic,
Take it till you make it.
Yeah, but it's really about aligning your energy with what you want to attract. Your energy has to match the vibration of what you desire.
So are you saying that forcing toxic positivity could actually be working against us?
It's definitely a trap we can fall into. We think we need to be positive all the time.
Right, we can't acknowledge the negative.
Yeah, but that's just not realistic. And Spring argues that ignoring or suppressing those negative emotions, it can actually block us from manifesting our desires.
Because we're not being authentic with ourselves.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging those feelings, understanding where they're coming from, and then consciously shifting our vibration.
So it's not about denying the negative, it's about transforming it.
Exactly.
Okay, so how does this divine order of operation actually work in practice? Do we have to master one law before we move on to the next? Is it like climbing a ladder?
Well, it's interesting. She says all of the laws are always functioning simultaneously.
At the same time?
Yeah. But understanding their sequence, the divine order, it helps us to really grasp the bigger picture. It's less about mastering each law individually and more about seeing how they all work together as a whole.
Okay, I see. So it's less about checking boxes and more about understanding the symphony of these laws.
Exactly.
They all work together to create this beautiful music of abundance.
Right.
It's like learning to play an instrument. You need to understand how each note relates to the others to create a melody.
Yes, that's a great analogy.
This is making me think about those times I've tried to force things to happen, It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Oh, yeah.
Is that what Spring is talking about when she says clinging to control can hold us back?
That's such a good point, because she actually talks about how when we try to control every little detail, it can create resistance.
Resistance.
Yeah, we're pushing against the natural flow of things.
Mm-hmm.
Remember how we talked about the microverse and the macroverse?
Right.
So the microverse is our own little world,
Big
right?
beliefs, yeah.
Exactly. And the macroverse is the universe doing its thing on a much grander scale.
Right.
And Spring suggests that when we try to micromanage our microverse too much,
We mess with the macroverse.
exactly, we disrupt the natural flow of abundance coming from the macroverse.
So it's like, instead of letting the universe do its thing,
Yeah.
we're over here with our little tweezers.
Trying to rearrange everything.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we find that balance then? How do we, take action towards what we want without becoming control freaks about it?
Well, that's where those abundance gifts and abundance opportunities come in. Remember how Spring talked about finding that rare baseball card at a garage sale?
Yeah.
It's not about just randomly getting lucky, though.
It's about being open to those moments.
Yes, it's about recognizing the signs, the synchronicities.
Those moments where it's like, whoa, that's weird. That's got to be a sign.
Yes, and we often miss them, because we're so caught up in our heads trying to force things to go a certain way.
Oh, totally. We're not even paying attention.
Exactly. So Spring encourages us to cultivate awareness, to pay attention to those subtle nudges from the universe.
So it's like we have to listen to our intuition more.
Yes.
That gut feeling that tells us if something feels right or if something feels off.
Exactly. It's about tuning into your own internal guidance system, trusting that the universe has your back.
Okay, so we've got to trust the process more.
Trust the process.
I like that. This is making me think about those 12 dimensions of consciousness that Spring talks about. Does understanding these dimensions help us recognize those abundance gifts and opportunities you were talking about?
That's a really great question. It's like, imagine you're playing a video game and you're on the easiest level. You can only see and interact with a limited number of things.
Okay, yeah.
But as you level up, new layers of the game open up to you.
You get new tools, new abilities.
Exactly. And suddenly you realize the game is way bigger than you initially thought.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So are you saying that these 12 dimensions of consciousness are like leveling up our awareness?
Yes.
We can perceive and interact with the universe in a more profound way.
Exactly. So Spring suggests that as we become aware of these higher dimensions,
We start to realize that there's so much more to reality than we can see.
yes, it's way more expansive than what we experience with just our five senses.
So, how do we even begin to grasp the concept of 12 dimensions? I mean, it sounds kind of out there.
Well, Spring breaks it down in a way that's easier to understand.
Okay, good.
She wants us to think of the first dimension as like a straight line,
Okay.
and that line represents time. Then the second dimension, that adds another line, and that creates space.
Okay, so time and space, I'm following.
Then the third dimension, that adds height. So now we have the physical world, Earth.
Makes sense.
This is the reality that we experience with our senses, right?
Right.
But then things start to get interesting when we get to the fourth dimension.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this fourth dimension.
So the fourth dimension, Spring describes it as the ether.
The ether.
Yes. It's like the bridge, the veil between our human existence and spiritual enlightenment.
Oh, wow.
It's also known as the astral plane,
Okay.
and it's a realm that exists beyond our physical senses.
So it's like stepping through a doorway into a different reality.
Yes. And Spring explains that this is where we can start to tap into the energy of the universe more directly.
More directly than we can in the physical realm.
Exactly.
Wow, okay.
And then she goes on to describe dimensions where we find things like the Akashic records,
The Akashic records.
light beings, angels, archangels,
Yeah.
even souls.
This is blowing my mind. So by tapping into these higher dimensions, are we essentially tapping into a higher level of abundance?
That's exactly what Spring suggests.
Wow.
Now, keep in mind, she doesn't go into every little detail about each dimension in this book,
Okay.
but she uses them to illustrate just how vast consciousness really is.
And how we're all connected.
Yes. She wants us to think outside the box of our limited perception of reality, to embrace a much bigger view of ourselves and the universe.
This is giving me so much to think about. It's like we're looking at this tiny little sliver of what's actually possible.
Yes.
But how do we take all of this and apply it to our lives?
Right. How do we use it?
Yeah, how do we actually start aligning ourselves with these universal laws to manifest the abundance that we desire?
Well, that's where her 7 universal rules come in.
The 7 universal rules. Okay, tell me more.
Think of these rules as the practical guidelines.
The ground rules.
Exactly. They help us navigate this whole cosmic game of abundance.
Okay, I'm ready to hear these rules. Let's dive in.
Okay, so remember how we were talking about those attempts to cheat the universe earlier?
Yeah.
Like trying to force things to go our way?
Right. We all do it.
Well, spring's universal rule number 2 addresses this directly.
Okay, hit me with it. What's universal rule number 2?
So universal rule number 2, it's pretty straightforward. It says, you can't cheat the universe to get what you want without facing a consequence.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. You get out what you put in.
Right, exactly. It's like that saying, you reap what you sow.
Totally. So is that what spring means when she talks about karma?
Well, she actually lists the law of cause and effect, which is basically karma, as one of the 12 universal laws.
Oh.
So yeah, she's definitely talking about that idea that everything's connected, our actions have consequences. But then she takes it a step further, you know.
Okay, how so?
She emphasizes that when we try to game the system, take shortcuts.
Like cut corners.
Yeah, exactly. It'll come back to bite us. It always seems to catch up with us eventually.
It's like trying to build a house on a foundation of sand.
Exactly. It's going to fall apart eventually.
It's not going to be pretty. I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
You know those times when I've tried to source things to happen, or I've compromised my values to get ahead?
Yeah, we've all been there.
It never really works out the way you hoped.
Right, and that's where universal rule number 5 comes in.
Okay, what's rule number 5?
It says, everything in life happens from you and for you, not to you.
From you and for you, not to you. That's a really different way of looking at things. So instead of being like, woe is me, everything bad always happens to me.
Which we've all felt that way at some point, right?
Right, like we're just victims of circumstance.
Exactly.
But Spring's saying we're actually creating our own reality.
In a way, yes. It's like she's saying that we're not just passive bystanders. Even when things go wrong, there's a reason for it.
Everything happens for a reason.
Well, it's more like every experience, good or bad, it holds a lesson for us. And we can choose how we respond to those lessons.
Okay, so we have a choice.
Right.
We can either wallow in it, or we can learn from it.
Exactly. We can resist, blame others, and stay stuck in that negativity, or
we can grow from it.
yes, and hopefully align ourselves more with the abundance we want to create.
So it's not about pretending everything's perfect all the time, right?
No, not at all.
It's about realizing those challenges are actually there to help us.
Exactly. It's like Spring says, the universe isn't trying to punish us.
It's on our side.
Yes. Even when it feels like it is. Spring uses this analogy. It's like we're this big block of marble, you know, and the universe is the sculptor. And all these challenging experiences, they're like the chisel chipping away at the excess stone.
I like that, so we can become our best selves.
Exactly, to reveal the masterpiece within.
So we've talked about rule number 2, can't cheat the universe, and rule number 5, everything happens from you and for you. What are some of the other universal rules that Spring talks about?
Well, one of the big ones is about the law of attraction and how it's often misunderstood.
Okay, tell me more.
So, universal rule number 6, she says, the law of attraction does not work on its own.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's got to be more to it than just thinking happy thoughts all the time.
Exactly. She's not saying visualization and positive thinking aren't important.
Okay.
But it's just one part of a much bigger equation. It takes all 12 of these universal laws working together in harmony to create true abundance.
Okay, so it's like an orchestra.
Yeah.
The law of attraction is just one instrument. We need all of them playing together to make beautiful music.
Exactly. And that's how we get to Spring's final universal rule, number 7.
Okay, lay it on me. What's rule number 7?
This one kind of ties it all together. It says, you have free will to create and live the life you want, and the universe will respond accordingly to provide you with the abundance you are either meant to have or that which you truly desire, whether through rewards or consequences.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay, so we have the power to choose our path.
Yes.
But then the universe responds to those choices.
Exactly. It's a two-way street.
It's like a dance.
Yeah.
We have to learn the steps, but we also have to trust our partner.
I love that analogy because it's not about bossing the universe around, you know?
Right. It's more about surrendering to something bigger than ourselves.
Yes. And when we learn to flow with it, the dance is way more fun.
This has been amazing. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on abundance now.
Me too.
It's not about chasing after something outside of ourselves.
Right.
It's about aligning with something within.
Yes, and trusting that the universe is conspiring to help us create the abundance we desire and deserve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To our listeners, if you're feeling stuck or just curious about this whole idea of abundance, definitely check out Abundance, the Whole Truth by Violet Spring. It's such a good one.
It's a game changer for sure.
It might just shift your perspective. All right, that's a wrap for this deep dive. Until next time.
Being a soul star is easy. Just like and subscribe to join the journey. Thanks for watching.